Hello everybody and welcome back to Stationeers. So last time we did our furnace. Well, we didn't, sorry. We made the tier 2 alloys. We went through how to make each one of them, kind of got some kind of order that we were able to do based on the pressure and temperature. And we made a few little tools. So we got like the new hard suit, we got some glasses, all is good. Up until now, I have been having some small issues with power because we've not really touched on it in any kind of decent scale. As you can see here, I'm kind of on about 25% power in total. That's all I've got left. And every now and again, I have been turning on my solid generator just to keep me going. We only have 4 solar panels, a flat solar panel, and a couple of large turbines. We also have a problem in our greenhouse. So let's quickly go and have a look at what that is. So it looks like our issue is nitrogen. We are below 1%, which isn't a massive problem. We've still got some. However, our soybeans will start to suffer from that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just empty my my jetpack canister that I have. Put a little bit more in here. The light has gone off. And that should keep us going. But what that does mean is we've obviously run out of nitrogen in our system. So we're going to have to visit gases probably in the next one. For now, I'm not going to worry too much about that. So back to power. Like I said, we've got 4 solar panels that are tracking, 1 flat solar panel, 2 large turbines, and that's pretty much it for power generation. We've got the solid fuel. We've got the fuel generator, which to be fair, isn't providing us tons of power when we turn it on. It's just helping last a bit longer. There are other forms of power generation in the game that we can do. However, because this is a beginner tutorial series, I personally think some of the other power generation options are more not beginner, they're a little bit more advanced, and it's outside of the scope of this playthrough. So I don't think we're going to touch on that yet. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to scale the power we have and also scale the power storage we have, because if we do that, that'll just keep us going for the foreseeable. So what I'm going to do is, because we have the tier 2 alloys, I'm going to head over to my workshop, and in the electronics printer, I'm going to search for battery, and we have some kit battery larges. Now these are much bigger than the station batteries that we've previously been using, so I'm going to print out about 3 of these. Whilst we wait for those batteries, I'm also going to print out some walls, because we're going to make some windows. There are 2 ways of stopping your solar panels from getting destroyed during a storm. You can either put them inside a glass box and then you vacuum that box out, and then they will basically work indefinitely. Or you upgrade to hardened solar panels using your new tier 2 alloys, and they don't take damage during the storm. I'm going to do both just so you can see it. Either option is absolutely fine. Boxing your solar panels in is cheaper, but depending on your playstyle, depending on what you want to do, you may decide to go for the other option. Okay, so we've actually got a storm coming in soon, so we're probably a bit late now to do this. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to encase these solar panels, because the storm comes and they take damage. But by putting them inside a room, they won't, assuming that you can get that room vacuumed. The reason we have to vacuuming it is because the way the game works, it sometimes is a bit funny, and your solar panels will technically think they're outside when they're not, if the atmosphere is the same as Mars. So you either vacuum it or you pressurize it. It's easier to vacuum, so you don't have to deal with cooling the box, and then thus you don't have to worry about it over-pressurizing and popping. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the solar panels, because at the moment what happens is the sun rises over here at 90 degrees, and it sets at about 220. In the morning, only the first solar panel is getting full power. The rest are having a shadow cast on them from the one that's in front of it. If we were to rotate these so they ran this way instead, in the morning, they would all capture sun. In the evening, they would all mostly capture sun. The perfect way of doing it is to do it diagonally this way. Because that way, they never ever cast a shadow on each other. However, because we're going to box these in, you're going to just use an over amount of walls. And realistically, I personally think it's a waste of material. So we're not going to do that. All we're going to do is we're going to rotate them so that they run this way instead of that way. So I'm going to start moving my frames. To save myself some cable, I'm going to use the single solar panels, but I'm going to rotate them. Previously, we had it like that, but if I was going to run these solar panels here, we would waste more cable. So instead, we'll do it like this, and we'll just have to change our code slightly to account for the new direction. I'm just going to lay the new cable. And you'll see right now that because we have them oriented slightly different, they're now not going to point to the sun. They're going to be off by about 90 degrees. They're all going to point in roughly that direction, as you can see. But the sun's set over there. We know how to do this. We have to just go and change our correction on our code. So currently we were subbing 180. So now let's just try changing that to 90 on the horizontal. And there we go. So they should now all be pointing to roughly where the sun set, and they should be rotating to the left. Which they probably are, but we're not going to wait for it. Because we're going to be boxing these solar panels in, we need to fully weld the frames they're sat on. And I'll just put my final solar panel down here. This one really isn't going to provide much power, but we've got it now. Waste not, want not. We're now going to put glass walls on. You realistically only need glass walls on the sides where the sun is going to be. However, I'm just going to completely make a glass box. We'll weld this last frame. And we'll go and get some more walls just for that little bit. While we're here, we're also going to grab a passive vent. Some pipes. I'm going to print out a pump and then another vent. Whilst I'm here, I'm going to start getting some heavy solar panels printed. So if you search for solar, and any that say heavy, these are the ones that we're after. The basic ones are the static ones. They're the ones that don't rotate. So you want to print out the ones that are solar panel heavy. Again, you don't have to do these. You can just go with the box approach if you want to. But I like the heavy solar panels, so we're going to go for it. I haven't quite finished the box, but I wanted to show you something. Here you can see that we've got 2 batteries that are pretty much full, which means the rest of this storm is now being wasted. That is why we are printing these large batteries, because the more storm we can capture, the longer we will last between storms. I'm just going to get this box completed. And there we go, that's our box completed. Now before I go any further, I'm going to wait for this storm to go, because I'm going to have to repair those solar panels once before we get this box completely finished. Okay, the storm is over. So what I'm going to do is just pop open one of these windows. And we're just going to repair our solar panels. And this should hopefully be the last time we have to do this. And now we'll seal up that window. And now we have to get that box vacuumed. So what I'm going to do just on one side is I'm going to place a passive vent. I'm going to stick a pipe going from that outside. We're going to have a pump. And we're going to connect that pump to another passive vent. I've actually placed that pump the wrong way, so let me just correct that. There we go. Now we've got to get that pump some power. There we go. And we're going to whack that up to full, and we're going to turn it on. I'm going to leave that on for a period of time. It's going to take a while to get rid of that pressure because it's quite low. There's not much in there at all. So we'll come back a little later. Make sure this pipe segment is empty, and then we will turn off that pump, dismantle that entire thing, and then they will be protected from any future storms. Right, looks like we've got our hardened solar panels, which is going to be very nice. I thought I was going to make 6, but I ran out of material. That's fine, doesn't matter. So what we're going to need for these is 5 glass per solar panel. In that respect, they are quite expensive. But I mean, it's only silicon, it's not too bad. But I'm going to need a total of 25 glass. I'm also going to print out some frames for them to sit on. I'm going to make iron frames just because I've already got the iron sheets. Obviously, it's cheaper to do steel in the long term. But nah, I've got unlimited resources. I think it's time for me to take down this old furnace. I'm not going to use it anymore. I've got my new furnace, which we can always keep repressurizing. So we'll just say goodbye to this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do with my solar panels is I'm going to place these hardened ones at the end of this corridor that we built here. So I'm kind of going to go here, and we're going to go out diagonally. The reason I'm doing it that way is because when the sun rises, each solar panel will not have a shadow cast on it. The sun will rise, and as the sun sets, again, they will all be facing this way, no shadow cast on it. If I was to place the frames like this, it would work in the morning. However, when it gets to the evening, the solar panel here will be blocked by this one. Again, it's a little bit finicky. I'm just trying to max out what power I can. I personally think this is probably the best orientation. Also, what I'm going to do is once I've got a single weld on these, I'm going to place all these solar panels in the same orientation as my other ones. I'm doing this so that I don't have to change the code. All I need to add is a different prefab hash so that we can code them. Before we get these cabled in, I'm going to head back over to my workshop. If you go into your electronics printer and search for cable, so far we've been using the cable coil and the cable coil heavy. The cable coil can transmit up to 5 kilowatts of power. The heavy cable can transmit up to 100 kilowatts of power. The cable coil super heavy can transmit up to 500 kilowatts of power. My advice would be use this for whenever you are doing power generation. So you can keep adding more and more power generation to it, and it's going to take you a while before you burn that cable out. So the way I would personally do it is use the super heavy cable for your power generation. So that's what you use for your solar panels, your wind turbines going into your batteries. The heavy cable comes out of the batteries and runs throughout your base. Obviously, as your base grows, you may need to consider swapping it for this, but it'll take a while. And then each individual room or section of your base uses the normal cable coil. Completely like a personal preference. You don't have to do that. It's just what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start by printing out some super heavy cable. It's quite expensive considering it's using electrum and constantan, but I do think in the long term it's better for you. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start connecting these new solar panels to the power grid network, and any cable going into my batteries will also be replaced with this super heavy cable. What's quite nice about the super heavy cable is that it has different length variants. So you can place a 10 long cable, and if you look here, I currently have 9. It only cost me 7. I've placed a 10 long cable, which only cost me 7. If I go and put the 5 length one down, it only cost me 4. There's no saving on the 3 length one. It costs 3. But the idea is that that is only one item. So it's only one item the game needs to load. Whereas if you're placing multiple of these, that is 3 separate items. It may not seem like a lot, but when you start getting into the long term, the end game, you're going to have a lot of things in the world. So these little changes here are going to help massively. If you recall, we also placed a fuse way back when. I'm going to take this up, and that fuse is going to get replaced with a 500 kilowatt fuse. We need to amend our code. Previously, we were just batched right into these kind of solar panels. However, now we have the hardened ones. So if I search for solar, find the heavy solar panel that I'm using. I'm using this one. I am not using the dual one. I'm going to grab that number. And all we're going to do is define solars 2 to that. Call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And then all we're going to do is we are going to copy our save batch lines. And we're just going to save to the solars 2. Export the code. we should now see our hardened solar panels rotating, running in line with our ones that aren't hardened. I'm not going to connect these up, mainly because I'm pretty much running out of that cable and the resources for it, but also I don't think I'm going to need them. Now that we've got so much power generation, I've doubled my solar, I think we'll be fine. The last thing I want to do is I want to scale up my storage. So as we did, we printed out some of these large batteries. So we're going to place them somewhere. I am actually going to move the batteries. I don't want them here. Instead, I'm going to have them on this side. By having them here, I don't risk blocking those solar panels. And it also means that I'll be able to build a room to put the batteries in. Because we haven't really touched on it yet, but batteries will drain power if they are cold. Because we're on Mars, it's always pretty chilly, and during the night it gets to like negative 45, 47, whatever it is. So it's always worth putting your batteries inside a box, vacuum the box, and then they will last longer. What's quite nice about the large batteries as well is that they have the button on the front. So you don't have to worry about placing one, pressing the switch, placing the second one. I can place them all just here and it'll be absolutely fine. The output of the batteries is the same as the small ones where you have got the 2 ports. So I'm going to place that at the front like so, and I'll place the other 2 next to it. In order to complete the battery, I'm going to need 4 steel sheets and 2 electronic parts per battery. So I'm going to go get those printed. And we'll just get these finished off. Let's turn them all on. And then what I need to do is I need to get power connected into the back of them. Now, the orange cable is my output, and my what was green cable is my input. Let me go and get my paint and get that painted. There we go, painted. Obviously, I've got the mod so I can paint the entire network in one go. Whereas if you don't have the mod, then you'll just need to go through and paint each individual cable. If you paint the stack of cables before laying them, you would save yourself some paint. So if I get my green paint, paint the stack, and then all I need to do is I need to connect the input of these batteries to this cable. I only have enough cable to connect to the first battery, but it's better than nothing. What I can do now is I'm going to disconnect the power going into my small batteries. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to deplete these batteries. That power has taken time to accumulate. I don't want to waste it. So what we're going to do for now is we're going to use the power in these and start storing any newly generated power in these. Once these are empty, we will then put our orange cable here and we'll start feeding the base off our new batteries. We will still use these. We'll probably bring them over here, but I want to move them when they're empty. There we go, I've got 2 batteries connected. I just need a few more cables and then we'll have all of them done. There we go. We now have 3 large station batteries starting to collect charge. Jobs are good. And that's starting to empty. When it's empty, again, we will get these connected and that's what we'll be running our base off. As you can see here, there is a slight shadow cast on those, which is unfortunate. To avoid that, what I could do is I could space the solar panels out so I could have a gap in between each of them. Or I could lay them diagonally like what we've done over here. Realistically, I'm not going to worry about it right now. It's absolutely fine. They're going to produce me enough power to hopefully see me through for a while. If you wanted to, you could create some more large turbines. However, what I want to do before I do that is just see how much of the next storm we collect. Because we can always scale up at any point. We may not need to do it right now. When the storm hits, we may fill up quite a lot of our storage. Whilst I'm waiting for that pipe, I feel like the workshop probably needs some TLC. We're at a point now where even if we don't pressurize it, we still deserve to have a better workshop. I do find that if you don't put work into your workshop or other buildings early on, you just never get around to it because you've always got more important things to do. So let's give this a quick makeover. And there we go. I personally think this is oversized, but I always oversize my rooms. It is what it is. Gives me plenty of space to expand into. But yeah, I think it's looking nice and crisp and clean. It's airtight, so it's not going to leak anything. Obviously, at the moment, we've just got Mars atmosphere in here, but we'll worry about that later. But yeah, all in all, pretty happy with how this came. I have gone for a little bit of a sloped ceiling, or sloped roof. If I just show you the outside really quickly. So I kind of use cladding for the top. In your auto leave, you can make cladding. Ignore a lot of that. That's all modded. But if you search for cladding, you've got all these different variations, and I've used the composite cladding long angled to give me these kind of nice long slopes. Cladding isn't airtight, which is why I've put ceiling pieces in. This is just part of the flat wall kit. But yeah, I think it looks quite nice. I've gone for an orange and white look on the workshop. And then we've got this nice little flat piece up here, which we can use for whatever we want, really. When I figure out what I'm going to use it for, I will. But yeah, very, very nice. I want to very quickly touch on something. Lighting. So, I have used kit wall lights here. If we search for light and the wall light, these use 50 watts of power, and that's when they're not on. I don't think I have what I need to check that. I don't. Oh no, we do. So if we get our network analyzer, put that into our tablet, and can we point this at one of the lights? Let's find out. We cannot. We have to look at a cable, which is fine. Let me quickly get some cable that I could just point at. So I'll just pull my floor grating up and look at the cable. So you can see there that each of the wall lights on is using 50 watts. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot for one light, but when you add that up, that's 300 watts just for the lights in here. To try and save on that power, we can automate them. So we only want them on when we come inside. So the way we can do that is, let me just sort out my tablet. Yeah, so the way we're going to do that is we're going to put some logic circuits in this little door, and we're going to automate the lights to come on when we're in the room. So I'm going to go to my electronics printer, and I'm going to print out a kit sensors. And what we're going to do is, I've got a designated space here just for random stuff. So I'm going to put an occupancy sensor up here. I'm going to use my glasses to determine that I'm going to use that cable to connect to. So occupancy sensor can go right there, and then we'll get that cabled in. And we'll make sure we paint that cable orange. So the way the occupancy sensor works is it checks whether the room it is in is occupied. Now, it only works in a room. They don't do anything on the outside. Just bear that in mind. But if we get our tablet, and we're going to want a configuration cartridge, which I don't think we've gone through yet. So head over to your electronics printer and search for configuration and print one of these. Okay, so with your tablet, stick the cartridge in. What this allows you to do is point at any electronics device, and you can read all of the logic information. So for the electronics printer, for example, I can see that power is 0, open is 0, error is 0. We've got 181 reagents. There's all sorts of information in here. The occupancy sensor, if you point at it, gives us an activate and a quantity. The quantity is the number of people. The activate is if there's a person. So if we have a quick look at the occupancy sensor in the Stationpedia, these are what we've just read with the configuration cartridge. And the activate, 1 if device is activated, otherwise 0. So it's a bit difficult to read it from in here, but if you have a look at it, you can see it goes grey when I'm not in the room. When I go in the room, it's green. And the airlock is classed as a separate room, which is why that's happening. But what that means is, when that's activated, I can just write that to the lights. Now we have touched on logic, so let's quickly do this now. So all we're going to need is a logic reader. So we're going to just stick one. Let me have a look where my cables are. So I've got my orange cable, which is on the same network as my workshop. So I could put a logic reader. And then we're going to want a batch writer. We'll get those cabled up. And quite simply, we're going to read from the occupancy sensor. And we're going to read the activate. And then we're using a batch writer because we've got multiple lights in here. So we want to write to all of them. So I'm going to take in the logic reader. I'm going to go out to the lights. I'm going to do the on. Turn this on. We can see we've got a 1. Turn this on. We can see we're writing a 1. So if we stand here, we can see the lights are on. Lights are off. Lights are on. Lights is off. And it's as simple as that. Obviously, we could use IC for that, but I did say I was going to try and move away from the IC just to keep it beginner friendly. But there's a nice, simple piece of automation, which, to be fair, is going to save you power. Because if you look at the logic reader, if we grab our network analyzer again, so if we point at this, you can see that the batch writer and the logic reader, they each use 10 watts, right? So we're going to be constantly using 20 watts, but when we're out of here, they are going to save us 300. So actually, we're doing pretty well there. And we could add more lights to this, and they would still be saving us power versus their cost, which is well worth it. So yeah, nice little bit there for you to do. So I think that's enough for the workshop. We've got plenty of space in here. We're going to have loads of stuff, so I'm not too worried about how much space we've got in here. We will definitely fill it as time goes on. Let's quickly go and check our box outside to see if it's got vacuumed. It has. Oh no, that's the wrong chip. Oh no, it is. It's empty. Perfect. So I could turn the pump off. We can now get rid of all this piping. We can remove the pump, remove the vent, and we can take away all that cable. And there we go. We've got our box. Now, a piece of advice is it took a very long time for that to become depressurized. So what I would suggest is instead of using the passive vent inside, use an active vent and then just have it go through pipes into a passive vent out here. That would have made it much quicker. But hey, never mind. It is what it is. Also, whilst I was doing the workshop, I was waiting for prints. We actually ran out of power in our batteries. So I got all of these 3 connected up, and we are now running off these. It takes a long time for these to get charged, but it's because they can hold a lot more power. So just because this looks pretty bad, it isn't. We've got a lot of power, and it is slowly building up. So I don't need to be concerned about power for a long time. Now we can get rid of these guys. And instead of wasting these batteries, we may as well use them because they did cost us some material, so there's no point in not using them. So I could stack them here and we could just have additional power. And to be honest, that's probably what I'm going to do. Another option you could do with these batteries is you could have a battery per room. So we could have a battery dedicated for our greenhouse, which takes charge from here. And if these become empty, we know we've still got backup power. I'm not going to do that because I do think, personally, it's a little bit overkill. But if we just do it here, this will be absolutely fine. Just have additional batteries. I just need to get some frames. And let's get both of these built. Get them kits to power. There we go. We can turn them both on. I just need to go and get some more of my super heavy cable because that's what we're using on the input side. And there we go. Got 2 more small batteries. So we are going to be pretty good on power storage. I need to just tidy this cable up here. There we go. But yeah, so we're going to be good on power storage. And for now, I think we're going to be okay on power generation. Because our power, well, the amount of power we've got stored is increasing slowly day on day. Plus, when a storm hits, we're probably going to fill these batteries and we will be good. If we ever get to the point where we need more power, we can just scale up either the turbines or the solar panels. Personally, if I need more power on this playthrough, I'm going to go for more solar panels, more of the hardened ones. And that is just where I'm going to get my source of power from. Yes, there are other, like I said at the beginning, there are other sources of power generation. I personally don't think they're beginner friendly. Feel free to go and have a look at them yourself and have a play with them. One option is the Stirling engine. So you can do this one. It basically requires a hot gas, a canister of something, and then it will output power as long as the surrounding atmosphere is cooler than the gas. This is prone to explosions, so, you know, I don't think it's beginner friendly. There is another one as well. If you search for generator, and there is the gas fuel generator, this guy will produce power from fuel. it needs to be in a cool environment, and it gives off a lot of excess heat, and you have to try and maintain the surrounding. So you have to try and keep it cool. Again, I personally don't think that's beginner friendly, so it's outside of the scope of this playthrough. But go ahead and do that if you want to. For me, and my advice for a beginner would be, you know how to do solar panels, just do solar panels. If you're not producing enough power, make more. If you are storing a lot of power but you're running out of it, like during the night, have more power storage. Just scale up what you have, and that will keep you going into the end game, really. Some people will just 100% solar panel, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. So that about covers it for this video. So if you've been watching the entire series, you know what we've done so far. We started, well, we had a very basic workshop in which we built from, and we first focused on our greenhouse, which, to be fair, is doing pretty alright. It does need some TLC. There's something we're going to have to look at later, but that's not where I want to prioritize myself. We have done some CO2 collection, so we're obviously injecting that into a greenhouse, and we have 30 megapascal of this stuff, which is very, very nice. That's going to last a very long time. And we've also touched on automation in here. So we've got cooling that's automated. We've got O2 collection automated. Nitrogen and CO2 intake all automated. So that's all good. We have also touched on the advanced furnace. So we have a furnace which, to be fair, is magically getting hotter and hotter as time goes on. Very nice. We can smelt ores for free, which is really good. All it costs is a little bit of power. We have backup hot tank should we need it, but to be honest, we don't. So all is good. We have sorted power out. So I've shown you how to box in your solar panels so that they are stormproof. We've also touched on hardened solar panels that are also automatically tracking the sun. So that's all that. And then we've decorated our workshop. This isn't really important, but it's just something we've done to try and make a nice start of it. So, what's the short-term goal of this playthrough? Well, I think now we're personally moving slightly away from beginner. Anything that we start doing from here on out is going to be slightly more advanced. Some of it very, very slightly. Some of it quite a lot more. I am going to keep this going. There is other stuff that I want to touch on that we haven't touched yet. So next time we are going to take a first look at trading. Not everybody's cup of tea, but if you're new to the game or you've touched on trading a little bit, it might not hurt to kind of have a look at it and see how it works, because there are some things that you're going to want to get from trade, and we'll touch on all that when we get to it. We're about to have a storm come, so we're about to have a lot of power. So yeah, next time we'll start on trading, and then from there we'll start expanding into slightly more advanced things that we're going to want to start doing. If there's anything that I've missed, if there's anything that you've already delved into but you would like me to kind of go over something, then feel free. Beginner friendly. We don't want to be going through anything like rockets or like phase change right now. I don't want to scare anybody. So if you're a new player and I just haven't covered something, or I have covered something but you want me to go over it again, then just let me know in the comments and I'll be more than happy to do that for you. Otherwise, trading is the next video. So hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you did, let me know. If you didn't, then let me know. And until next time, take it easy. Bye.